Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 140. Racing Tyler Jones, Dominic Aragon, and Dante Ricci here with you. We are pleased to bring in the show this week NASCAR Hall of Fame nominee. Greg Biffle is set to join us. We'll ask him about his nomination to the NASCAR Hall of Fame and catch up with Greg, see what he's doing nowadays, and have a fascinating conversation with Greg when he joins us coming up in just a little while from right now. We'll have our news and notes with the latest headlines in the sport and look ahead to this weekend's race at Kansas Speedway. I'll be there this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. Certainly looking forward to being back at my home track. And we'll also have our mailbag segment as well at the end of the show where we'll let you guys ask some questions to Greg as well. Dominic, let's start with Denny Hamlin getting that win this past week at Dover. He called his shot and he delivered. And the 11 team right now, they're just clicking on all cylinders. They seem to be the biggest threat to the Hendrick camp right now.
They seem to be a big threat for that 2024 title too, and just collecting playoff points and running exceptionally well. And that 54th win, tying Lee Petty 12th all-time on the NASCAR wins list. And got to love that quote, Tyler, from Biffle on Sunday saying he couldn't hold Lee Petty's helmet. Just the humility he showed with that, but certainly
From Hamlin, you mean?
For Hamlin, yes, for Hamlin saying he couldn't hold Lee Petty's helmet. So one win away from Rusty Wallace, a few away from Kevin Harvick. We're looking at the guy with the most wins with no championship, but maybe, Tyler, that could change this year. Hamlin looks as great as ever.
Yeah, and as Dante Ricci joins us right now, Dante, first off, glad to have you here, man. I look at the way Denny's racing right now. He's competitive everywhere. He can win on any given track. But one thing I see different that might help him for this championship potential run is he's relaxed. He is going out there and he's shown a lot of energy. You know, he's laid back. He's confident. I wouldn't even say cocky, although some people would. I think he's just confident and relaxed, and I think that's making a difference in why he's running so well and why he's a threat to win the championship here. What say you?
Absolutely, Tyler. He's got the right approach for sure. I mean, he could definitely be committed to getting to that right spot on the racetrack, take advantage of that clean air, and also he's got this next-gen car figured out to a fine-tooth comb, in my opinion. I mean, to be in the lead there near the end of the race and maintain it as well as he did, keeping that track position, that's going to be really key for him throughout this season.
Yeah, and Dominic, one last point before we bring in Greg real quick. This is sure shaping up to be a battle between JGR and Hendrick. We saw Kyle Larson making a run there towards the end of that race. Had there been an overtime, we may have been talking about a different result. He finishes second. Truex finishes third. He's up there, of course, in the point standings. And we saw a fifth-place finish from Chase Elliott, who won a couple weeks ago at Texas here. Even Alex Bowman getting the top 10, finishing eighth. I mean, this is shaping up to be, I think, the JGR Hendrick Invitational potentially here when we get to the postseason.
It's sure looking like that. The Hendrick and Gibbs camps certainly are showing the most speed and showing I think if you were to look at the raw data, and I don't have that in front of me, it would show Gibbs and Hendrick cars consistently the most inside the top 5, inside the top 10. And I believe 7 out of the top 10 positions and points right now are held by those cars. And Christopher Bell, I think, is the outlier in 17th. But nonetheless, he's showing speed too with that win out in Phoenix. But certainly, it seems like if you're going to win a championship in 2024 in the Cup Series, yes, there's parity with the new car, this next-gen car, but it's certainly going to be going through Hendrick or Gibbs at this point.
The cream rises to the top, and that cream appears to be JGR and Hendrick right now after Denny Hamlin ties the top the wins list for 2024 with that win there at Dover. Dominic, our next guest is, I think, a fan favorite. I don't know anybody that doesn't like this guy. He's won in everything that he's driven in all of NASCAR's top 3 levels. He's now a NASCAR Hall of Fame nominee, and we still see him racing from time to time. Tell us about the one and only Greg Biffle.
Greg Biffle will be joining us here on the show this week. You may remember, you diehards know he was our guest for episode 69. No fitting more guest for episode 69. He even told us then, too, episode 169, he'd like to be our guest at our calculations tower. That's going to be about October. But Biffle joining us on the show this week, newly off his NASCAR Hall of Fame nomination, 19 Cup wins, an Xfinity Series championship, a Truck Series championship. He's done it all. He hails from the great state of Washington. Biff, thanks so much for joining us this week on Let's Go Racing.
Apabsolutely, guys. I've enjoyed listening to the opening of the show here, and kind of excited to be on.
Yeah, absolutely, Biff. Thanks for being here with us. First off, kind of tell us what's going on with you these days. Catch people up to speed. What's going on in your life, man?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've been working entirely too much, and I thought racing every week, 40 some weeks a year is a grueling schedule, but it's self-inflicted. I love to do all kinds of things, and I'm running all over the place, 900 miles an hour, but finally getting to go do what I love. I'm gonna sneak away next week and do a little bit of fishing and come back for the Darlington weekend. So really looking forward to that. Doing some off-road racing and working in the shop, building cool stuff, and just keeping everything going in the same direction.
Absolutely. They say, Greg, people that retire, I'm not using that R word, but people who tend to step away from whatever industry they are, and they tend to stay busier once they step away. You're clearly an example of that.
Yeah, I am. I just, you try and figure out what the heck happened. But you don't. I think part of my problem is I don't know a schedule, right? It's because in racing you are doing or working or autographs, interviews, traveling 7 days a week. There's no weekend and no weekday. It's just what it is. So I find myself, what am I going to work on today? What am I going to work on today? And that's just the way I am. Am I going to work on the kids' go-kart, motorcycle? Am I going to, work on something around the shop or whatever? So it's just, that's the way it is. And I find myself just 7 days a week.
There you go. Well, certainly I'd love to ask you on this one. Last week, NASCAR announcing the finalists for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And certainly a lot of us found out alongside some of these updates on social media, but I'd be curious to know how you found out, if you got any heads up before everybody else, and what was your reaction to seeing your name on that short list?
I'll tell you, I didn't get any heads up, and Wayne Otten called me. He was the director of the series when I won the championship, and he called me at the time it was going live on the internet. And I guess he said they wouldn't let him call me ahead of time, but so I found out as it broke. He called me and told me, and I'll tell you what, I was kind of overwhelmed, excited. It wasn't even on my radar, not even on my radar. So I'll tell you what, I'm certainly grateful for the nomination, and now the hard work becomes getting enough votes to get in, which is, there's a lot of, I don't know if you've seen the list, but there's a lot of great names and a lot of deserving people on that list. And I've thought that since day one, when they started it. You look at the list and it's, oh my gosh, how do I decide between all these guys?
Right. I mean, and it's names that you raced alongside some of your most recognizable competitors, even former teammates of yours, Greg. I mean, the likes of Jeff Burton, Carl Edwards, Ricky Rudd, just to name a few that are on this. What would it mean to you to potentially beat out some of your fellow competitors for one of those Hall of Fame spots?
Man, it would be a dream come true for me. It would be, it would maybe be a little bittersweet, that third championship that eluded me in 2005 with that loose wheel at Texas. Maybe that's a little icing to smooth that over, but it would mean a great deal to me to be able to get in the Hall of Fame, and for my family and fans and everyone and all the guys that have worked, on the cars over the years. That's what, we enjoy racing like racers. We enjoy the win because everybody gets to cherish in that. All the crew guys, all the shop fabricators, all the engine guys, the guys that drive the transporter, the secretaries in the office. So, all those people are part of making us successful on the racetrack, or whether it's a small part or big part. All those guys that helped me through the years, it's sort of a boost or a win for them. That they were all part of helping me get in if I happen to get voted in.
Yeah, it's a great point. I know Dante's got a question, but let me just jump in real quick. One more thing here, Greg. I'm very curious. What is kind of your outlook or approach, if you will, to this Hall of Fame? Do you campaign for votes over this next month beforehand, or do you kind of just let your body of work speak for itself?
I thought about that, and I thought, is there, things I can do? And, the fan vote is certainly a part of it. So, you could kind of campaign social media and whatnot and friends and family for votes. But at the end of the day, that's a small portion of the votes it takes to get in. So it's the media. And I don't know all of the folks that vote. I know it's former drivers, crew chiefs, members of the media, members of NASCAR. There's a great deal. I think there's around 60 people that vote. So I'm just hoping that I can get the votes. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Go ahead, Dante.
All right. Hi, Greg. I just want to tell you, I am a huge fan of you since I was a kid watching NASCAR and seeing you come through the Craftsman Truck Series and the Busch Series with Roush. It is just an honor to be able to talk with you today. And that 2005 season stands out to me as a dominating performance, even though it didn't have the full championship crown on it. You really performed that year. And watching you in the summertime, what was it like driving those high horsepower Roush cars with just the amazing amount of aerodynamic work and time and effort? And really, how hard was it to drive those cars compared to at least the last couple of years of your career in the Cup Series?
Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing like getting it figured out. And you could say Denny Hamlin has it figured out right now. And meaning the team, the engineering, the feel. A lot of when I was winning in 05 and racing against Tony Stewart and Carl and Mark Martin, it was really the drivers, pass and the crew chief. It wasn't really a bunch of data and relying on engineers and all those things to decide what bump stop. And once you get that feel in the car, and once we got it figured out, we searched for that everywhere we went. And I'll tell you, there's no better feeling going to the racetrack knowing I've got 100% got a chance to win this weekend. And on the same token, there's no worse feeling than going to the racetrack going, we don't have the downforce, we don't have the stuff it takes to win. And we go to the racetrack, at the end or towards the end, it's a goal to try and stay in the lead lap. Try and put ourselves in position, try and get a 2-tire pit stop at the end to maybe have a chance at getting up front and stealing one. But the difference between that and the 05 season when, our cars were dominant, there's just a huge difference in that. And there's no better feeling than feeling like you're in somewhat of command or control, and that you're the guy or one of the guys to beat every weekend. And there's no better feeling than that for a driver and a team.
That's fantastic.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, that is definitely an earned achievement, and it's something that comes with years of dedication and in addition to the teamwork, but working hard, and that's just huge.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes that knack and you'll think sometimes you'll be like, oh, what's wrong with JGR? They're not doing, real well, or they're not that strong as they were last year. And it's just, it's just that cycle. It's just that figuring out that, I like to say, figuring out that mousetrap. And it's sort of, it kind of comes and goes around the teams, but it's those guys digging and that hard work every week that keep them on top.
So along those same lines then, Greg, let me ask you, right now, obviously, one of the big stories in the sport is the struggles of Ford as a whole. And I'm sure you can relate of being through the peaks and valleys of what you saw in your time driving for Roush and driving through those Ford teams. What do you think's going through the minds of everybody involved in these Ford teams right now, whether it's the owners or drivers or teams, of just this struggle they've been with this new body to begin 2024, not getting to victory lane in the first 11 races here?
Yeah, it's it's so hard to determine. There are so many moving parts, and the thing is this is years of work. So the commitment from the engineering and the chassis dynamics and all of the things that Ford has been working on and the teams have been working on, are they working in the right area? Are they going down the right rabbit hole, so to speak? And it appears like maybe these other teams have a little bit of an advantage right now. And certainly, like I've said forever, it's not a lack of effort. It's just potentially a lack of effort, maybe not in the right particular spot, or they just haven't figured it out yet. And part of that is now you've got to undo what you've been doing and try something different down the other, path, and see if that, nets you the result. And those things don't happen overnight. Those things are months to kind of regroup and go the other direction. And so is it aerodynamics? Is it fundamentals on the chassis and suspension, kinematics, kind of what is it? What are they lacking? And if it's all Ford teams, you would think it's an inherent problem with either the bodies or whatever technology they're using currently. And it doesn't take much, and we'll just have to wait and see what the results are.
It's a great point. Greg Biffle, NASCAR Hall of Fame nominee, joining us here on Let's Go Racing this week, as he has just been nominated, and we're looking back on his career and such as well. So, Greg, with that, I want to ask you, based on where the sport is right now compared to when you were racing full time. I know you've driven the next gen car and everything. Just how different is it? We were talking earlier just about how, the goal of the next gen was kind of to get some more parity. And here we are, we're still talking about JGR and Hendrick being on top. You've been in these cars. How different are things now compared to what they were previously?
Well, it's the cream will always rise to the top, and the problem is a lot of times is you have marketing people or business people trying to make a decision about competition, and that isn't always that isn't always what creates better racing. There's this discussion. We could have this discussion till the sun comes up. What makes better racing? More downforce, less downforce, more horsepower, less horsepower. And then what helps the underfunded teams or the smaller teams? What will help them? If we build these cars all the same, it's going to help these smaller cars. If we share everyone's air pressure, what they're doing is going to help these small teams, because then they're not going to have to spend the money and they don't have the time and engineering to figure it out. It's very difficult because I tend to disagree with a lot of the thought process when it comes to making everything the same. And I use the analogy, I've said it forever. If we all go to the go-kart track and every car is identical, how are you going to pass someone? You're not going to be able to do it because you don't have any kind of advantage. If you all weigh 160 pounds and the cars are exactly the same speed, you won't be able to pass. So you need parity, but at the same time, you need ingenuity and things, teams to be able to have secrets and not all of your throttle trace data and steering data and the way the driver picked going into the track or, turned into the corner. Now they got these giant iPads and they can see if they're 6 inches higher than the other car. And, some of that I tend to disagree with. I think it should be the driver, the car, the crew chief and the engineer, and figure it out. And, cars run out of gas. That creates drama. We don't want to have a car never run out of gas again. We don't want to ever have a car, never blows an engine up in a race. It's those kinds of things that create that drama and create the folks to want to watch it. And, so some of the competition things that bring them closer together, we want to see tighter racing. Now, are you talking about restrictor plate racing, or are you talking about closer together at Martinsville or Bristol or Dover? You're always, the lead car's always going to have that advantage. You watch you watched Kyle Larson chase down Denny, but couldn't do anything when he got 8 cars back. You'll never change that. That's just part of physics. It'll never change. And you see Kyle driving all over the racetrack, and then the lap traffic became a factor. That's what creates great racing.
Certainly so. And maybe to change gears a little bit here too, but being on the NASCAR Hall of Fame nomination list now, and it makes me think too here, Greg, like we saw Jimmy Johnson get in the Hall of Fame this year, and he's still continuing to race, became the first NASCAR Hall of Fame active racer. So I got to ask you, if you do get in January and you are a member of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, would that kind of entice you to go back racing more? Or does that kind of, what are your thoughts on that as far as if you were to make that leap and become a part of the Hall, how does that affect your decision to go racing?
I hadn't thought that far through it yet, but I think my thing stands that in the right situation, the right opportunity, I said I'll get back behind the wheel, and whether that's to help maybe a small team, or that's a big team has an opening and they need someone to fill in, or whatever it might be. I don't think I'm interested in running full time, but certainly it's fun to get behind the wheel and be competitive. And it gets tougher and tougher as it goes by, as these teams get better and as technology gets better and the sim gets better. It sort of leaves that the driver, the man and machine behind a little bit, because you have to go spend all that time in the sim and understand all this stuff before you go to the racetrack. So some of that stuff, it continues to change as we go. But I don't know. I haven't put a lot of thought into that part of it yet.
Sure. Well, at least for this year, we won't know till January, right? But even over the next few months, is there an opportunity, or has there been opportunities to get back behind the wheel, or who do we see be back behind the wheel in a NASCAR race this year?
Yeah, I mean, I got an offer to drive an Xfinity car at Darlington, and it just wasn't the right situation for me. And but I'd really love to run Portland, Oregon. That's a great. I love that racetrack. I grew up out there. I won there in the trucks. I didn't race on that track much. I raced at Portland Speedway, the half-mile oval. So, but I love the Northwest. It'd be fun to go out there and race at my, so to speak, home track. and I'm running a road race at Lime Rock in July. So I'm looking forward to that and doing some off-road racing. So I'm enjoying it, and I'd love to get back behind the wheel in a competitive car. And I had a lot of fun in 2019 in the truck in Texas with Kyle Busch's program. That was a lot of fun.
Greg, we always like to talk about the journey around here. And so I'm very curious, as you look back to where you were at to where you're at now, who would you give the most credit to for helping you along the way? Was it someone in your family, or was it a team owner or a crew chief? Who's the one person you look back on that helped you get there the most?
It's it's multi-layered. Obviously Benny Parsons was really the guy that got me my opportunity with Jack Roush. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without Benny Parsons' endorsement, recommendation, whatever you want to say, that Jack hired me. And then, for Jack taking the chance and taking the opportunity to hire a kid from the Northwest that he knew nothing about was, that was a big leap of faith. And my parents and family have been so supportive over my career and sponsors and friends. So it's really hard to, Benny Parsons, that are my family, kind of comes first. They backed me and got me my opportunity. And then Benny Parsons, really put me on the map, so to speak. And Jack gave me that opportunity. So it's a lot of people to thank for where I've been able to get to and what I've been able to accomplish.
That's fantastic. That's great stuff. We're talking to Greg Biffle, NASCAR Hall of Fame nominee, here on Let's Go Racing this week. Dante, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, so Greg, I remember the Pepsi 400 about 20 years ago, and that amazing win that you were able to pull off on fuel mileage and strategy. I really wondered how close that was that night, because nowadays, with the way the fuel pickup is in these cars, it's obviously different, per se. More or less, how long of a fuel run was that, and how close do you think you guys really were to making it?
We were definitely close, but the car didn't run out of gas on the cool down lap and the burnout. So we had a decent amount of gas, fuel left. And honestly, it's sort of a fuel mileage race and sort of not. Like, there was a group of cars that pitted, with however many laps to go. And then a different group of cars, cycled through, so how the race can get a little bit broke up throughout the day. And that's really what it boiled down to. There was a fair amount of cars. Bobby Labonte, I remember Bobby because he was breathing down my neck. But there was a fairly decent group of cars, maybe 10-ish cars on or more on our strategies, so, lead lap cars. So, it was a fuel mileage race, so to speak, because those 10 cars or 15 cars were, close on fuel, meaning we had a lap or two to the good. And in fact, Bobby ran out on the very last lap. So all of us were kind of in the same scenario, but it wasn't, it wasn't a traditional, what I would call traditional, fuel mileage race, so to speak. But we were definitely close, and I was able to save some fuel in the draft, and we just didn't know what was going to happen, and that was that opportunity fell in our lap, and now we did almost win a Talladega race on fuel mileage. We were the lone soldier. There was 2 cars, me and another guy. We were on our own lap, and I think Jimmy Johnson blew up or something happened, like 2 to go. And so that ended up not happening. But anyway, it was Daytona was a little bit different, but we were definitely close on fuel at the end.
And if I could get just one more in, as far as I'm concerned, you're the winner of the Kansas race in 2007, in my mind. Okay, Greg? So as far as anybody says, you won that race and you had enough fuel.
Yeah, that was funny because we that we were close on fuel at the end of that thing. And then I started unbuckling coming to the line, and because we knew it was over and we knew it was dark, and I just shut it off and was coasting. And some Clint and Jimmy, those guys thought that I wasn't quite going fast enough, and I was unbuckling my helmet. I had my gloves off, the checker flag, they're waving it, and I had the engine shut off coasting. So it was, I know there was controversy around it, but we weren't out of fuel. And looking back at it, should I have fired it up and made another little speed up to stay up with the pace car more? Yeah, but I knew it was over and I knew I'd won it.
That's great. That's fantastic. One more thing, Greg. We got time for another question or two before we move on to our headline segment. Greg, when you're watching on Sundays, when you're at home or at the racetrack, either one, who do you enjoy watching the most? Like, who catches your eye just as a fan, or somebody you find yourself rooting on? Who do you find the most enjoyable to watch out there of the current drivers?
That's a good question, because I enjoy. Here's the thing. Maybe I'm different, but I enjoy the competition of all the guys and the strategy and whatnot. So I'm pulling for kind of all of those guys, if you will. I don't really have a favorite when it comes to Kyle Larson or Denny Hamlin or Joey Logano or any of the other guys. I just enjoy watching the teams and watching the drivers and the strategy, kind of unfold throughout the day. I like that more than anything. So I know it's a lame answer, but I really don't have a driver that I'm like, man, I hope this guy wins this, every week. And, there's sentimental guys that don't have the opportunity as much as others. I felt bad at Talladega. He was right down to the end, and, couldn't hold off, maybe a little bit too big of a block, and, Michael McDowell got himself turned around. But, that team that doesn't get an opportunity to win all the time, I was hoping he would stick it out there at the end. But, that kind of thing, it changes week to week, I think, with kind of who you're rooting for a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Greg's going to stick around. We got a few more things to get to. Let's begin with our news and notes segment for the latest headlines around the sport. Dominic, where are we starting with this week?
Well, we're starting with charters, and are we close to a deal? That depends on who you're going to ask. So according to a latest article out by The Athletic on Tuesday, April 30th, there's still no timeline. And depending on what team owners you ask, maybe some are willing to take a new deal, maybe some aren't. It seems like talks are going cold with NASCAR. And I got to say, Tyler, I read through the article, great reporting from The Athletic, and certainly there's a lot of mixed bag of emotions right now among team owners. And it seems like NASCAR leadership isn't meeting with the council per se or the teams all together, but one by one individually. And as we get towards the summer months, we have no deal in place. And at this point, the charters expire December 31st. There is nothing guaranteed into 2025 at this point.
So Jim France, of course, the CEO of NASCAR, calling the shots and leading the way. And Greg, I'm curious how you feel about this, but hearing these reports that Jim France is not taking the meetings with the charters as a organization and trying to meet with teams individually and stuff, it feels like Jim France is kind of undermining the charter system and what's in place and not wanting to work with these guys. What is the your thoughts or conclusion, if you will, on how NASCAR is handling these negotiations right now?
Well, I don't know a great deal about it, but what I will say is, we run and help run the Sand Outlaw series. And I'll tell you, when you're in a larger group of people, you don't always get the same answer as you do sitting across from the table of one team or one guy. So, I wouldn't jump to conclusions. I would say that, he's meeting with these teams individually, because a lot of times people will be swayed by, hey, everybody wants to do this, but there's 4 or 5 guys that really don't, that don't, feel like they have the position to go against all the other teams. So, maybe that's part of it, or I really couldn't speculate any further than that, other than to say, sometimes people will act differently or maybe speak their mind in a different situation. So that could definitely be part of it.
Dante, I know that we still have a long ways to figure this out, but any negotiation, there's going to be compromise for these two sides to come together on an agreement of some sorts. They're going to have to do something relatively soon because the charter agreement runs out at the end of the year. If they compromise and find some middle ground, that's probably actually a good sign of a good deal for both sides if they can find that middle ground, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to have something that's profitable for the teams to get sponsors, but at the same time, NASCAR needs to make sure their situation is right. So I'm hoping that they're going to be able to come to an agreement that everyone will go forward with, and we'll have 36 charters or whatever number that they decide moving forward that will keep the sport at the same competitive level and, at least allow some of these teams to have a chance up at the next level.
Well, and then Dominic, as I was reading that article from The Athletic today, it's fascinating because if they don't get some deal done, then it's the Wild West potentially. You got teams threatening not to run all 38 required races that they require every charter team. The charters all of a sudden lose the value that they've been trying to invest in all these years here. I mean, this could get pretty crazy if they don't come up with some agreement here.
It certainly can. We're talking that same article too. And I believe it was Chris Polk, I think is his name, 2311 Racing, partial owner in the team, works with Michael Jordan on a lot of the business affairs. And it is very, very like jaw-dropping to think that we could come to a point where we don't have your top teams entering every race. If there's no charter agreement, there's no guarantee on money or no guaranteed structured payout structure like we've had the last few years. Really, we've talked about it on the show over the season, Tyler. You really can't rule anything out of the realm of possibility until a deal is put in place. Like we said last week, BJ McLeod is looking like a genius right now, but there's no charter agreement. He's going to look like the ultra genius. But if there's a charter agreement and charter starts selling for more, the more time goes on, maybe it looks like, oh no, BJ McLeod was holding the bag. And it really feels like it could go either way at this point.
Greg, let me ask you, with just where the sport's at, this charter and ownership agreement system, when everything settles down, wherever that may be, is there any interest in you potentially becoming an owner someday at some point?
I think I would be interested in participating at some level, but to be to own a team, I don't think I have any interest in that solely, but certainly to be associated with someone or help with competition or help drivers or help them whatever they might need, I would certainly be interested in that part of it. But yes, it would be cool to be in the ownership role, but gosh, it's so complicated. And I've been, on the other end of it for 18 years. I don't know that it sounds fun, but I don't know if I want to try and take on that role. And it takes a special person. You look at all these guys. You look at Roger Penske. You look at Jack Roush. You look at Joe Gibbs. These are special people. Richard Childress, right? All of them. And those, you think about it for a little bit. Those are hard guys to replace in this sport someday. So it's those are big shoes to fill.
Well, along kind of what you're talking about, Greg, tell me if I'm wrong on this. It sounds like that maybe there would be some potential interest from you in one of these driving coach / advisor roles of sorts, like we've seen with Matt Kenseth with Legacy Motor Club, and we've seen Kurt Busch do it now with 2311 Racing. Is that something you're kind of talking about here? And how important are those roles to those teams, you think?
I think it's very important because, I didn't think so when I was driving. And, a driver doesn't want someone telling them what they're doing wrong, what they might be doing right, what they should be doing with their personal life. But I will tell you, drivers easily get distracted and easily lose focus and whatnot on, and not even really know it. And you get frustrated and you kind of, you're not spending as much time maybe with the team or the guys. It makes a difference. Why do you think when they switch teams, Hendrick switches all the crew guys and Jack and Roush has done it. Everybody's done it. They switch team guys from this team to that team. Well, it's the same guys. It's the same equipment. They haven't changed anything. Literally, they've changed nothing, but then they both run better. It's a morale thing. It's, getting the most out of your people. And so as I've got older and recognized it, there is something to that it's just a knack. And whether each driver will accept it or not, I think that there's a way to put it in a different perspective for a driver that you can understand it. And coming from a driver that's been there through all that, I think they respect that a lot more than someone that's, just trying to tell them what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
Great insights there. Greg Biffle here with us at Let's Go Racing this week. Dominic, what else we got going on?
Well, one for the nostalgia on this next news story. So we know Kevin Harvick's going to be returning back to the NASCAR Cup Series, at least in a practice and qualifying role in a non-points race. It was announced on Sunday ahead of the NASCAR race at Dover. Kevin Harvick is going to be on standby for Kyle Larson in May when it comes time for the All-Star race, and his duties at North Wilkesboro is time that he's going to be spending trying to attempt to qualify for the Indianapolis 500. Certainly a lot of schedule things and logistics to figure out, but Kevin Harvick potentially coming out of retirement to go behind the wheel of the number 5. He's raced the 5 car in Xfinity, Tyler. Never behind the wheel of a Hendrick Motorsports car in Cup, though, so should be fascinating to watch.
Dante, let's start with you this time on this one here. Obviously, a unique circumstance. Kyle Larson's got to handle his business at Indy. Kevin Harvick going to be able to give some direct feedback when he goes in the broadcast booth. If for whatever reason, if Kyle Larson gets stuck in Indianapolis, I would hate that for him. But selfishly, I wouldn't mind seeing Kevin Harvick run the All-Star race in the 5 car.
That would be very interesting, Tyler. But I will also say that part of me wants to see Kyle Larson do well and have that opportunity to maybe win both races, of course. That would be awesome. But you never know nowadays with the way that schedules play out. These races could go a long time. Kevin Harvick is the perfect replacement in the event that it's needed. with experience in that next-gen car. His insight, though, of course, from what he compared to the previous Generation 6 NASCAR car to now, when he was at Stewart-Haas, and he had a really good amount of team chemistry and strong performances for a few years. I will say that there is probably no better replacement if in the event he does need to drive that number 5 car.
Well, Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't know if the rules changed for the All-Star race, but I would think that even though it doesn't almost matter where Harvick qualifies the car, if Larson does make it back, he would still start at the back of the field, right?
Correct. I would believe that same rule would apply where you could have somebody practice and qualify the car. No matter how good they do, on paper, you'll be slotted for that in the numbers game, the stats for that information. But yeah, you're going to start at the back. You're going to have to because it's a driver change.
Greg, give me your thoughts here. How cool is this for Kevin to hop in the 5 car there at North Wilkesboro just to get some laps in there at the practice and qualifying? And what does that mean for that 5 team to have somebody like Kevin step in just to take care of practice and qualifying while Kyle's away there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to be able to get that opportunity. Everybody loves, to get the opportunity to get in a different car and have that opportunity. So for Kevin to get in the Hendrick Cup car, one arguably that's one of the best cars in the series, it'll be good for him. Obviously the pressure's on to run decent. Again, everybody knows it doesn't really matter where he qualifies because Kyle is starting the back, but all eyes are watching and egos are watching to see how he'd run in this car and how competitive he may look. So it'll be interesting to see how he does.
Let me ask you this, Greg. Have you ever got the opportunity to run at North Wilkesboro? And would you do something like this if you got the call if you were in Kevin's circumstances? Does it make you a little jealous here, what he's doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't mind hopping in there. But again, those are big shoes to fill. And, those are the kinds of opportunities I'm talking about that would I get back behind the wheel? Those are the opportunities where, you're going to, jump at the opportunity. But there's so many better candidates. I don't want to take myself out of there, right? But there's so many, like Hendrick in-house type of guys they could use also. So but prospectively, yes, that would be an opportunity that, I'd jump in and help them out.
I love that. That's great. Dominic, that situation there it wouldn't shock me one bit if Kyle Larson, after missing all the practice and qualifying, goes from the back to the front, still wins the race.
Yeah, that would be in typical Kyle Larson fashion, right? Arguably one of those generational talents, and we get to see him really get to overcome adversity in an all-star situation like that. Oh, absolutely. Who wouldn't love to see that?
That'd be cool to see. What else we got, Dom?
So before we move on to the Ask segment, we got to take a look at the Advent Health 400 this weekend at Kansas. Tyler, your stomping grounds. Dante, you're very familiar with the area too, and certainly want to get your take on the weather here in a second for this weekend. Don't want to jinx that, of course. But the Advent Health 400 at Kansas, going into the race weekend, we know there's going to be 38 entries in the Cup Series, including some Xfinity regulars who will have the week off in their usual series. Riley Herbst running the 15 car. You have Austin Hill running the number 33 with Richard Childress Racing. Jimmy Johnson also taking a hand at the 84 car again. Should be interesting to see back-to-back weekends and what he could do in that car. And of course, the odds for the race weekend. Kyle Larson coming in at your odds-on favorite, opening odds per the racingexperts.com at plus 30 or plus 380 or 3.8 to 1. Denny Hamlin at 4 to 1. Tyler Reddick, who won this race in the fall, at 6 to 1. Martin Truex Jr. at 7.5 to 1. Christopher Bell, 8 to 1. Bubba Wallace, who has won this race in the past, 15 to 1. And some of your long shot bets include Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, and Kyle Busch at 22 to 1.
Greg, tell us what's it take to win at Kansas. What kind of race you expecting this weekend here?
It's a slick type of racetrack. the weather really depends on how that track's gonna run. But I see, the guys up the racetrack, a guy that can get his car to run, down in the middle, like Kyle Larson typically is able to do. He's going to be a tough car to beat at a racetrack like this. So it really takes a well-balanced car at this kind of flatter, slick, if you will, a little bit slick type of racetrack. And it's one of my favorites to watch. I enjoy it. And, I'm in there driving the thing with the guys the whole time watching. So I can't wait to watch it this weekend.
Dante, we'll let you go
Yes.
first. Give me a pick. Who gets into victory lane on Sunday in Kansas?
Well, I like Tyler Reddick for this one. I'm going to go with him from how he won in the fall and also the performance of 2311 Racing and how well they've been doing in the past few races as well. They really, in my opinion, did good at Dover. There were just some hiccups there at the end of the race. And I mean, the Toyotas have been strong at this time of the year. So that would be my favorite pick with Tyler Reddick. Weather conditions look a little bit sticky. We're talking about temperatures in the 70s and that good, typical Kansas southeasterly wind at 20 miles an hour. So that'll be a challenge for the engine tuners. And, it seems like it's always really windy whenever I would come out there to Kansas. So it's going to be exciting.
Oh, yeah. Should be a fun race. Certainly looking forward to being back out there. First time for me in several years I've been out to Kansas. I got to go Tyler Reddick. That's 2311's house. They've been so good there the last few years. And Toyota's figuring things out. Tyler Reddick won a couple weeks ago there at Talladega. I think he gets back in victory lane for the second time in 3 weeks. How about you, Dom?
Well, I would have to agree to a point that 2311 Racing and Kansas Speedway tend to have a great working relationship. They have that place figured out. But I think the story of the weekend is going to be redemption. And not only from what happened at Dover last week, but recall the race in May last year with a chance to win going bye-bye. I think we see Kyle Larson get back to victory lane at Kansas Speedway on Sunday.
The Biff, who's your pick? It's so funny because Biff, I remember all those years of John Roberts picking you every single week on NASCAR race day. Now we're asking you to make the pick instead. Who do you got?
I'm going with Kyle Larson. He got a close taste last week. That's a racetrack that kind of plays into his wheelhouse. Most racetracks do, but I'm kind of going with Kyle Larson this week. But again, there's just so many good cars. It's tough to pick someone, but I think I'm going to go with Kyle.
All right. There you have it. Those are our picks this week. Our mailbag segment coming up next. Email us, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. Also on X at Starr Podcast, Facebook.com/Starr Podcast as well. Our questions in the inbox this week, where we allow you guys to submit questions and for our guests and for the panel each and every week. Our first question comes from Edward. Edward wants to know, Greg, we've seen you run 2 throwback paint schemes at Darlington, including the Hooters colors. How much behind the scenes happens to make sure the team and sponsors are on board for these type of deals?
There's a lot with that goes on behind the scenes, believe it or not. But I really enjoy it because about all of the sponsors typically are on board with the throwback paint schemes, and I think it just goes to show what a sponsor feels like they can get out of being associated with something like that, historical or what not, participating. And I think it just shows the fans, and the fans end up, supporting and enjoying the sponsor, allowing those things to go on.
Yeah, and the thing too, Greg, you look at a lot of these paint schemes that get thrown out or thrown over the years, like for example, the Kyle Larson paint scheme, the Terry Labonte throwback colors, probably not a lot of red tape, I'd imagine, to go through with Rick Hendrick owning HendrickCars.com. But I would imagine, like, okay, the Ally paint scheme came out earlier this week and how that's throwing it back to Jimmy Johnson and maybe making the font kind of look like the Lowe's stuff. I mean, from your perspective, when you ran those throwback schemes, or when you would see that at Roush, how much do lawyers get involved? Like, is it get really sticky, or is it one of those things where it moves kind of fast?
I don't know how much goes on. I kind of know superficial. I spent a lot of time with the sponsorship people and team managers and things like that, or I guess sponsor liaison for the sponsor. And it goes up the ladder. It's got to get approvals and all those things. So how much pushback they get, I really don't know. I'll tell you what, they're very, very particular when it comes to the shape and the color of their logo, and it not, has to be represented this way and that way. So I'm sure there's a lot to it when you want to go and change use a Lowe's font or something like that on an Ally car. But they recognize at the same time, I think, coming from me, small amount of business sense I have, I see participating in that, gets the fans excited about your product, not necessarily the throwback. It puts you in that category as participating in this whole thing. And I think it garners support from the broader fan base.
Another question coming in the mailbag this week. This comes from Omni. Omni wants to know, Greg, will we ever see you run the 69 car in a NASCAR race, and would NASCAR allow it?
I think NASCAR would allow it. We've seen the number before, and I certainly hope so. That is my hope, is that I'll be in the 69 car in the Cup race.
Now, let me ask you this, Greg. Obviously, all sponsors are important, but would you want something to be a play on the 69 if in a perfect scenario to be the sponsor of sorts? Like, are we talking like Trojan or something here?
Viagra? I don't know. Mark, when Mark had that sponsorship, it was nice. It's kind of entertaining to be his teammate, if you will. But no, I really don't have any. I don't have any particular things in mind, but it would just be nice if it all came together.
That was one of my favorite sponsorships of all time. Now you mentioned it, Mark Martin and Viagra. What a match made in heaven that was.
Oh, absolutely. You couldn't pick a better spokesman for the thing and a driver and a team. So it was great. I hated to see that go away.
Was it any coincidence that they left shortly before David Aragon showed up? Like, I guess that wasn't going to work or something.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it's definitely interesting.
That's great. That's great. Time for one more in the mailbag this week. This is a Facebook question from Ben. Ben wants to know, Greg, what was it like running the 44 Dodge for the Petties?
That was so much fun, and that car was so good. I'll tell you, when I've gone and run other cars for other teams, it's remarkable how good these cars are. Think about when I ran the Bruco Xfinity car. We were leading the points, and I think I'd missed a race. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but I think I'd missed a race, meaning we weren't scheduled to run it, and I was leading the points. It's like, and then I filled in for someone in Andy Petrie's car. I'm drawing a blank at the particular moment, and Bobby Hamilton. I filled in for him at Bobby Hamilton, and we're leading at the first time I drove it, qualified third or fourth, and the Petty car was the same way. Just, I really enjoy driving some of these other cars I got the opportunity to. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if you haven't had the opportunity to visit with Richard Petty, and he's just an ambassador of the sport, a great person, and just stand-up guy. I really wish that I'd have run some more races for him.
That's cool. Great stuff there. Greg, it's been awesome having you here. Now I'm just waiting on when you're going to have the tell-all book, and I'll volunteer. You can use Dominic to write it for you. You don't have to do anything with it, man.
I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna. I gotta get going on it before I forget all this stuff. So, as you start to get older, start to forget some of these great stories, but you start talking about it and it all comes back. So yeah, I definitely need to get going on my book.
Absolutely. I'm honored, Tyler, that you would volunteer me for that. But now I can tell you, Greg, working with Bodine on his, it was a lot of fun going down memory lane. He had a great time recalling stories, and things would just kind of come back to him too as we'd start getting going. So hey, I'd love to help you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get, like I said, I need to get going on it here sooner than later. So it would be fun, and it's fun to reminisce and go back through, all those stories and starts.
Absolutely.
I love it. Dante, anything else from you for Greg before we wrap up here?
Well, I gotta say that Granger company, we have a good little discount here through my organization that I could use, and sometimes I'll order some things from Granger. But every time I see that, Greg, I always think of you. And I have a collection of trading cards now that Mr. Dominic had gotten me for Christmas, and it really is from those years where you were in the Truck Series and the Busch Series. And it's an honor to be able to talk with you tonight and get such a great perspective and side of things.
Yeah, they're a great company. I was so lucky through my career that I had, only a few kind of major staple sponsors, and Granger and 3M and National Guard were sort of the mainstays through my career, and it was fun to have those relationships and not go through the sponsor circus every single year and half seasons and things like that. So it was a lot of fun and a lot of great memories.
Great stuff. I love it. Greg, before we kind of wrap up, tell us what's going on in your world the next couple of days, man. People give a glimpse inside. What's going on with you here?
Well, I'm getting ready to go to Florida, and I'm going to Sarasota to pick up my boat. I'm going to go down to Fort Myers and stay the night. Then I'm going to come through the Lake Okeechobee waterway from the west coast to east coast of Florida, which, by the way, I've never done before. And so that's going to be one hell of an experience. And after I make it through there, I'm going to take a day to recoup, and then I'm going to cross over to the Abaco, Bahamas, from West Palm Beach over to my property in the Abacos, and spend 4 or 5 days there, catch up on some well-needed fishing, which I haven't done this year. So, and then I'm going to head home and head to Darlington. So that's what my plans are. I'm certainly going to be able to catch the race, which I never miss. I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully catching some big fish and coming back to reality.
I love it. That's great stuff. Dante, how about you? What's the next few days look like, man?
Well, we have a quieter weather pattern, I will say. West Virginia, where I am now, has been very busy, and we're coming off a month where we had a year's worth of tornadoes in one day, if not even more than that. on April 2nd. So it was quite a situation. I wish that May will be much quieter, but this week it's about early summer-like, to be honest. 80 degrees. I mean, I'm not used to that during the month of May. I'm used to like 65, 70, even at that from my East Coast time. But I will say this week will be good. We've got some soccer going on, the State Cup tournament. I'm still refereeing and trying to stay with the game as much as I can. And, you know, continuing to enjoy every moment of being a meteorologist.
I like it. Great stuff. Dominic, what's going on with you?
Be out here home in New Mexico this weekend and just spending time with the family and helping with coverage remotely from Kansas Speedway this weekend. I will miss being out there with you guys. I know, Dante, you've gone in the past, and Tyler met you out there 10 years ago. I can't believe that, but you're going to be out there this weekend. I'm really excited for you and Brian O'Connor, who's going to be on our team this week. And tell us about that. And more importantly, some cooler stuff that's going to be going on outside the racetrack.
Yeah. So I'm going to be driving up on Friday. I got my sister's graduation up there from college, and then sticking around for the race as well. And then hit the road right afterwards, drive from KC to Dallas and go to work the next day. So it is going to be a full weekend indeed. Certainly looking forward to it. Greg, appreciate the time, man. We can't wait to have you back for episode 169 here sometime later this year. Always a pleasure when you join us, and best of luck on the Hall of Fame nomination. Congrats again.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And later in the year, I'll be back and join you guys again.
There you have it. Greg Biffle joining us here on Let's Go Racing this week. We'll put the checkered flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. As always, you can subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit the like button. We certainly would appreciate it. Also, follow us on social media, facebook.com/Starr Podcast, X @Starr Podcast, and you can email us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. For Greg Biffle, Dante Ricci, Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones saying so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.